I think let's get started here. So, hi everybody. My name is Doyle Irvin. I am head of marketing here at Elvex, and we have the founding team of our company here as well. Do you guys want to start by saying hi? Let's start with Sachin, go to Mike, and then John. Do you guys want to say hi?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Sachin. I'm the one of the co-founders here and the CEO of Elvex.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Sukwaneski. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders, and happy holidays to everybody.
Way to one up there, Mike. I'm John Levitt. I'm also one of the co-founders here, COO, and I brought my Elvex hat, which is a one of one, and maybe we'll have more available someday for our favorite customers who might be on this call.
But
Yeah,
not for
I want
anybody
one
else. I don't
too.
get one.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
So let's get started here. We have a lot of information for you. Broadly, one of the things that we're doing in this is that we've gone through about 50 of the state of AI predictions, industry surveys, and reports, all predicting what's going to happen in 2025. And that's the meat of our webinar here. We're going to be talking about what are the coherent stats that, everybody's all kind of predicting that this sort of thing is going to happen. But then where we think it gets really interesting is where the industry doesn't agree with itself. And so we're going to be bringing our own perspectives on like these different contradictions and what the various reports are saying is going to happen next year. We're also going to be talking a little bit about our fundraising, which we're very happy to share about, and share a couple customer stories of people actually applying generative AI in business and work scenarios. And then we're going to preview a little bit of our new features, but we really want to be leaving a lot of time for our Q&A at the end. So if you have questions about generative AI, deployments, our platform, if you have just a workflow that you're trying to figure out, please feel free to add it to the Q&A, and we'll be chatting about that towards the end. That being said, make your comments as we go along, and we'll try and address them as we go. So let's get started. What we did, we read all of these reports, and we're going to start with what are the top topics that are fairly consistently across all. It's not very surprising. AI adoption is a huge topic. How much are people actually using it? How much is it impacting the business and the workforce? There's a large focus on upskilling employees. Data, huge question here. None of these things are very surprising. Obviously, number 10 is maybe the most interesting in terms of clicks and conversation, geopolitical implications, but we're not going to be spending a whole lot of time on geopolitical in this webinar. The kind of top 5 challenges and top 5 emerging trends are also not too surprising. Everybody's worried about cost and ROI and predicting what's going to happen. Data, again, massive question, and the talent and skills gap on how to use AI, how to build AI tools that work, etc. There's a lot of focus on the rise of AI agents next year, how you can have a kind of coherent data and AI strategy. There's a lot of discussion as well about smaller models, open source models, and specialization in our tool sets. And then one of my most interesting and favorite things just personally is number 5 on the right, which is the unstructured data stack. How you take all of this information that you currently couldn't do anything with at your business and turn it into usable things, whether that's images or text or what have you, videos. So nothing too surprising here. Also, nothing too surprising about where people think you should start applying AI in kind of ranked order. Customer service, sales and marketing, data analysis. These are considered kind of sort of the low-hanging fruit of like where you can immediately begin benefiting from AI. And so what that kind of looks like from our analysis of these reports, and also where they agree, what you will broadly be seeing in 2025 is kind of like a maturation year, going from hype to real business value. Lots of people are focusing and agreeing on a hybrid approach, multi-cloud, multi-model, multi-platform. Again, the focus on augmenting your workers with AI, democratizing it, adopting it in mass, especially in small and medium business amongst the non-technical users. We're going to see lots of continued innovation. This is what you will see in 2025. Now, let's get to where the stats and the reports, don't always agree with each other. We've got a number of different topics here, which we'll be having Sachin, Mike, and John discuss their take on this. And so beginning with the first, AI adoption rates, this slide from the State of AI just cracked me up. In 2023, all the focus was on, AI is dangerous, but there's a huge vibe shift in 2024. 2024, it's please use my app. You also see different rates of retention. So the bottom left graph here in blue, that's retention for people who started using AI tools in 2023. And then in red is 2022. So you can see a major jump in people who are actually continuing to use the tools, as well as major jumps in product billing by quarter. Then on the other hand, you have Goldman Sachs saying that only 6% of American companies are actually using AI in products and services. You have Sequoia, who published this massive and went super viral AI $600 billion question, where they're highly skeptical that all of this investment is going to be paying off, and they're more on the bubble side. And you have Forrester predicting that Gen AI is going to orchestrate less than 1% of core business processes in 2025. So then you have PwC disagreeing with Forrester. They're more on the 70 to 60% of people are going to be realizing value, have it be a major part of their plans. And again, small businesses seem to be really adopting and using AI quite quickly, which is not surprising given enterprises' hesitations around ethics and data. So here we are to the first debate point here. This is a bold claim. Do you agree, disagree? What is your take on AI adoption in 2025? Will 50% of the Fortune 500 equip a majority of their workforce with some level of generative AI in 2025?
I'll kick us off. I'll say no. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we could say no. For me, I think many are just still moving very slow. I think many haven't found the right ways to actually, if we're talking about a majority of their workforce, that's a huge expense for most businesses. And the business models for access to most AI tools is not really accommodating that level of rollout without significant de-risking ahead of doing so. I think the largest Fortune 500 companies, unless of course they find their way to elvex, which we hope they do, will probably have to move much, much more slowly, just because they're going to be more risk averse.
So I'm on like somewhat of an opposite side, but it's a nuance in how even like this statement is phrased, right? So will equip a majority of their workforce with some level of generative AI. Equip is probably the verb where I'd probably agree with John. I'd say like, yes, they might not equip at the rates that we're thinking, but I'd say it's also a fallacy to think that folks in Fortune 500 are not already using generative AI. They're just not using potentially a means that has been officially sanctioned or equipped through their organization right now. But there's no doubts, I think, in anyone's mind that people are using this right now, and it's just going to be outside of maybe an approved context or something like that.
I'll also go somewhere in the middle here. Like you're gonna have the perception and the reality. The perception here, what you would hear on earnings call, what you're gonna hear in like communications about these companies is huge adoption of AI to get impressive results across their organization. The company that I think about that's really kind of rode this really well right now is Klarna, who has talked about kind of like AIfying their whole workforce, how they like have stopped hiring overall because they don't need to. But then when you dive into the details, yes, they like got rid of platforms like Salesforce, but then they moved over to other platforms that are like the equivalent. And so I think like the devil is in the details here in terms of like, okay, are you going to give people access to it? That's one thing, but are they actually going to use it and get real value out of it? That's a whole nother thing. And so I think equip, same with Mike, I think the equip word here is important to recognize. And I think you're going to hear a lot of hype continued from this year over into next year about use of AI. And then the reality will be a very different story.
Yeah, exactly. The equip here is doing a lot of work. It implies an organized central kind of motion to target the whole workforce. Okay, anything more to say here, or should we move on? Let's keep rolling. All right. So the next question is, will there be a clear winner? And here you can see just the absurd amount of capital expenditure across the board from all the major providers here, where everybody is making a big bet on this technology. And you can also see the beginnings. These are, AI testing metrics, and you can see that there's just a mix of models that are all at the top of leaderboards in terms of their performance and, how good they are, quote unquote. Another view here, you see, OpenAI. You also see Gemini from Google. You see Claude from Anthropic. You also see some of the open source models like Llama from Meta. You can see then on the other hand, small business engagement with tools. The left-hand side here, you've got ChatGPT in the light blue, and then you have everyone else in the dark blue. You can see utter dominance by OpenAI. Again, here as well, the business spending from small business. I also thought that the graph on the right on where the share of wallet is being spent is very interesting. The revenue projections, this was, I think, came out in October. You can see that OpenAI just is utterly dominant in terms of how much revenue is coming from generative AI tools. But the mix here between the API and chatbot subscriptions is very interesting, especially how much of Anthropic's revenue comes from the API. Finally, these slides just absolutely blew my mind. You can see that NVIDIA has more market cap in Canada, the UK, France, and Germany. And as well here, just utter dominance in terms of the GPU market share and the traffic and attention that the various models are getting, both ChatGPT and NVIDIA hovering about 90%. So the question here, the prompt that I'd like you to react to, despite the current 90% domination by OpenAI and NVIDIA, there will not be a clear winner in AI. What do you think?
I don't think there's going to be a clear winner. I mean, like you look at any consequential tech in history, like even if you just look at recent history, and the early entrants into the race have not been the dominant players at the end of the race. You could take that with mobile phones, look at BlackBerry or Palm. Those companies don't exist anymore.
There's a lot of hate going for Canada right now in this webinar. I don't know. As only Canadians on the call, I'm not sure the heat that's coming my way.
Oh, sorry. Should I call it research in motion, not BlackBerry?
Sure,
Is that
sure.
more? And then you go back to like the internet browser wars, like way back when, like Netscape doesn't exist. And so usually the early entrants, though they do get a first mover advantage over the long term, that advantage tends to evaporate. And I think we're already seeing this now. If you look at the model, the dominant model company here, OpenAI, where I think I posted this on LinkedIn. Like in December, there's been a new major model release almost every single day of the month. And if you think about the capabilities of the models, the fact that costs are dropping across them, the fact that there's like parity closer and closer between them, it just makes it a really hard bet to say that like something that is being commoditized in the space, there's going to be a clear winner. On the GPU side, I think NVIDIA arguably has like an infrastructure advantage because of like what they've been doing over the past decade. So maybe they get a little bit longer of a competitive advantage overall, but I still think like people are going to catch up to that game too.
Yeah.
I think there are factors like for OpenAI in particular, you look at their latest funding, $6 billion and burning $5 billion per year, which is very indicative that they will likely need to, within 12 months, do another billions of dollars of fundraising. And with the corporate structure that's changing from nonprofit to commercial, I think there's a lot of questions about how that company in particular continues to operate. It seems undeniable that there will be changes in how it operates, and maybe that helps them become the clear winner in this space, actually. Or maybe this is like a huge barrier for them to actually achieve what they're aiming to achieve. It has to play out a little bit, but you look on the other side and Google is sitting on just like piles of cash and profits and definitely very well positioned to play the long game here. As you know, and there's many other competitors as well, but it's kind of hard. And I think a lot of people have ruled out like Google as a competitor in this space because their early introductions of their products were not very impressive. But you look at their latest releases and they're like much more impressive. So with the space moving as fast as it is, whether there will be a clear winner or not, I don't think anyone can predict like who that winner is going to be. But I think it's also very likely that there are just several options in the space. I think to tie this back to elvex a little bit, one of the factors that maybe levels the field here is the interfaces that sit on top of the models. And so like elvex being a connector and an enhancer to models and giving them capabilities that they might not have directly it definitely helps like level the playing field. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how the market kind of like reacts and evolves from that perspective as well. It's not just like the model capabilities themselves, but the interfaces on top of them become paramount, especially in enterprise business situations where like the end user is so important to the value that you derive from the models themselves.
What I was going to say
And
too is that the models, like we've sometimes even said too, the models are becoming more of a commodity, and even that framing, I don't know if I'm now fully on board with it as much as more the models matter, and the approaches that these different companies have, especially in terms of what their training looks like for these models, matters a lot actually. And so we've seen this when we're building elvex apps or helping customers build elvex apps, whereby swapping out one model for another dramatically improves the performance of what you're doing given the use case that you might be working on. And so at this point in time, to say that OpenAI's GPT-4o that's it, we can't do better than that. We've already seen examples where that just isn't the case, and there are more specific models that help with these things. And so I think this sort of modular approach is still going to be the right one for years to come as model development still kind of increases at the clip that it's going right now.
Well, the one thing that I'll add to the mix here is that there's like a conventional wisdom with the model providers that all you need to do right now is add more compute and data to the model training, and they will get better. That follows like a linear curve up and to the right. There are people in this space. One of them is Ilya Sutskever, who is one of the co-founders of OpenAI and started his own company. I think in the past like 6 months or something like that, recently left to start that. And his kind of inclination is that we don't necessarily have the optimal path right now, and there could be like a whole new way to do this. And so if you think about that, then this is like really blowing this open, where you would think like the only people that are going to be able to compete at this level are going to be the biggest, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, the Googles, the Metas, the Microsoft. But if there's a new approach here to take where it's not just like throw more compute at that could blow open the door to a whole set of other startups and companies playing in this space, and could really erode the advantage of some of the leaders here. And so I think we're in the very early stages of LLMs, or even just like how we're applying this technology overall, and that will change. And so yeah, it's one of the bets that we have at elvex is just like we think that we're too early for anybody to just as a company make a bet on any model right now, and so like we can be the place where you can have freedom from that.
we got a good question from the audience that I think you just answered, Sachin, which is David Kaplan asking, what do you think about the resource usage implications are as this technology continues to scale? Will the energy and hardware required to power the technology limit scalability even when ingenuity and innovation is continuing? And that kind of plays into what you're just saying, is that like maybe it's a compute problem, maybe it's an ideas problem.
Well, there's
we
like
just don't have the right
there's two
algorithms
things
yet.
that limit model like improvements. Two kind of main things. Like I'm very much simplifying it, but one is compute, and the other is data, right? Training data. And so like we kind of used up a ton of the training data, which is the internet, right? And so there is like that is not infinite. Even though you might be like, oh, the internet is infinite. It's like so many websites, so much content being produced, like it's actually not. And a lot of that has been used up right now. And so that's like one area. The compute side, I do think like we're gonna continue to get like energy improvements over time there. And I think like that's gonna end up being okay, or there'll be different approaches to it. Arguably the data side might be the more like interesting restriction or limitation here. And it'll be interesting to see which route we go, which, there are ideas like synthetic data or, using different ways to kind of train in like very narrow scopes or fine tuning, things like that, that you might be able to get more value out of.
I was going to say too that
I'm gonna
the researchers who worked on a lot of the initial architectures for the models that we have today, a big bet that they made is that you just need really, really big neural nets, and you need lots and lots of data to train them. And so far, we've never been able to prove that you're able to do a different approach to that, right? There is no foundational new architecture to some of these things that folks are looking at. And the big energy requirements of these neural nets is actually often in the size and the amount of data that you've got, right? So if the neural net is absolutely massive, and if we have to have like the entire internet to train on it, it's going to end up using an incredible amount of energy to do these types of things. So I think now that the cat is out of the bag in terms of how useful the architecture is, you better believe that there will be definitely research poured into how do we make this more energy efficient? Are there different types of architectures that could work better, and are there tweaks to things? But I think for the foreseeable future, especially training of these new models is still going to be a pretty energy intensive workflow.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to keep us moving here. Okay, so the next topic is getting into building your own AI tools versus kind of buying a platform, and the rise of open source models. So here you can see Udacity, which is now part of Accenture, did a survey, and that most of the tools and platforms and applications that people are developing are for internal use. So like helping employees do work instead of external use, as in like customer facing experiences that are powered by generative AI. And you can see here this report from Andreessen Horowitz, where they're arguing that there's a major move towards open source. This is a little bit of an older report, but this is their predictions for 2024, saying that 46% of their survey response say they strongly prefer open source models over, the closed proprietary platforms. This is, Meta's release of their Llama models in June, where they're having a leaderboard, stack up against, Sonnet from Anthropic and GPT-4, and they're saying, hey, Llama is just as good as all the rest of these things, if not better. And then finally, from Forrester here, we have this prediction that 3 out of 4 firms that build aspirational agentic architectures on their own will fail. So this is framing up this next discussion here, which is that by the end of 2025, companies that are building their internal generative AI chat experiences for their employees will realize that they have completely wasted their money. Do you think that they will have this realization or not?
Mike, you go first. You're the engineer here, so this is closest to home for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have such empathy with this one in particular, right? Because if you are an engineer working at any organization right now, the idea that you can't use generative AI in some way, shape, or form, where you're not able to play with it, would feel like I'm missing out on, the next greatest thing. And so my answer would be yes. I think that like specifically the chat experiences part of it, and trying to build, say, like a chat GPT style clone inside of their own organization and branding it something internal to that. I do think that's going to be one that's going to be tough to justify as 2025 goes on. If for no other reason, you're going to have a huge surface area to continually catch up to, right? The folks that are going to be using your internal build already have an expectation set from using ChatGPT or elvex or something like that in the past, and you're going to have to meet feature parity with that and then continue to develop on it, right? And that's going to be it's easy to get, I think, the approval for the first build. I think it's much harder to get approval to kind of keep going on that stuff once you have a team of 4 or 5 developers on it full time. All that said, I think it is right for people to be experimenting with generative AI right now. I just think that they should look at efforts that are more core to the product offering that they've got, right? So you use the product and engineering resources that you've got to try to double down on something that is really core to what you're doing, as opposed to, generic chat experience maybe for the entire company.
I would not encourage any company right now to go out and build their own like version of ChatGPT, but those that have already or that might do it intentionally or accidentally, I wouldn't say that would be a complete waste of money. Like, you're going to learn things along the way. For me, one of the most important things is that people just start doing things with this technology. Whether it's the right things or not at the start, like, almost kind of doesn't matter in some ways. If you can manage to start working on the right things first, then yes, let's do that. But there's many companies that I've talked to, as prospective elvex customers, that started down the path of building their own thing, and then realized like, oh, this is actually really hard, and keeping up with all of the features and like delivering the user experience. We didn't really anticipate all of those things in the same way, but it was really eye-opening for us to go through that process to understand what it is that we're actually looking for now. And so like, it might be a complete waste in terms of not delivering like direct ROI to the company in the way that like the project was initially envisioned, but still, like, there are ways to extract value that can be applied toward like the next stage of what the company takes action on from there.
Yeah.
I agree. So nothing really to add.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Let's keep moving here. Yeah, one of my kind of takeaways from reading all these things is that you might see a lot of open source models being applied to product experiences, but then when you're thinking about, tools for your employees, that they might lean more towards proprietary kind of platforms or solutions. So let's continue here. The next question is, where is work going to happen? As we can see, ChatGPT has this new Canvas feature. Anthropic has their own, and this framing from Section School says that, ChatGPT Canvas is their play to become the default workspace where everybody does their AI-assisted work. And so if you're working on a document, a presentation, you're coding, you open up ChatGPT, and the document that you're working on is modified and edited all within that experience. On the other hand, you have things like Microsoft Copilot, where you already have your apps, whether it's Excel or PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, Word, blah, 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 blah. And Microsoft is just embedding within their own ecosystem that they kind of control this Copilot experience, and generative AI is showing up in all of those. And then on the other side here, really expanding it here, this is, for example, the MarTech map, where there's 14,000 different SaaS providers creating marketing technology. There is the idea that every single one of these providers is now beginning to work in generative AI as part of their feature set. And so the question here for the team is like, do we have, the effectiveness of AI as a horizontal intelligence layer, and chat as the optimum interface for working with OpenAI? And you might see consolidation of the way that we work in an interface like ChatGPT, or are you leaning more towards like, hey, at the application layer within each of those 14,000, marketing technology apps, are you just going to have generative AI kind of working on the back end, and the user might not even realize that it's generative AI because they're just clicking buttons in a tool that they already know?
So my bet would be that for 2025, we're going to see more of the right-hand side, and it's going to be a slower burn, but you're going to eventually see the left-hand side win out. I think the potential of generative AI, like what the technology can do, but also when you look at Microsoft's Copilot or something like that, and its deep integration within a stack, it is super helpful. And by all means, OpenAI and other players could do things where they help you edit a document better. I think the real unlock is going to start coming when you're not just editing potentially that one document that's just inside of Google Workspace or inside of Microsoft, but you need to interact with other parts of the stack that you've got across the enterprise, right? If you need to pull in data and information from something else, then that helps you to edit the document and or add something to it or modify something there. I think the eventual promise and vision of what that looks like is certainly something that we're also excited about on the elvex side, and we'll have some stuff to share even in this webinar for what we're working on there. But I do think that for 2025, we're going to see more of a it'll look like the right-hand side of this argument's winning.
Disagree. I think people are they're already tired, man. They're getting like exhausted with the AIification of everything. And they're getting exhausted with the reality of it not being that impressive right now. Like you saw the backlash to when Microsoft released Copilot, and like how most people were just like, this is kind of trash, right? Like it's not actually delivering any sort of the value they want. So I already think we're in the place of like, call it trough of despair of all the things being AIified. And I think people want, like, I think in 2025, people are going to want like clarity. They're going to want focus. They're going to want a place to go to where it can be more horizontal and it makes more sense than like going to deal with an AI inside of this app and then that app and this other thing. And you're just like, what am I doing? I also think like this is like a weirder kind of take on this, but I also think it's like kind of a nightmare for companies to deal with all this, right? Where it's like, how do I just manage simple things like data and security if everything has access to this, and then who's getting trained on top of this stuff? And so I don't know. I just feel like we're already at the place where the verticalization of this is really tough for a lot of companies to swallow, and they want in 2025 they'll want to go horizontal.
There's a difference, I think, between like where will the work happen from like a here's our 2025 prediction and where should the work happen and what are the key influencers of how this actually plays out. I think it's going to be a lot of the market responding to the options that are put in front of them by the vendors that they're currently working with. And a lot of those vendors are going to push toward like, come into our tool and do more in our tool, but the ring fencing of what that tool can do and access by what that tool provider has in their ecosystem, like that's the biggest challenge, I think, for buyers and decision makers. And so I think for people on the call, they're like trying to think through this. The question for me is like, how do these decisions actually get made? Like, how does the strategy actually come together for the business? What experience do you want for your company? And then like go out and find the right options to create that for the business. I think too often these decisions are made by people who may not be connected to like what the end user actually wants, and instead are responding to, oh, we have a deep partnership with this company, they're offering something new, it's integrated, everyone will love it, without doing the work to actually understand if the business user, like if the business users will actually love it and it will be valuable. I think to your point, that's where Copilot has kind of fallen down. Yeah, it's integrated. Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, maybe there's like, security and procurement and legal benefits to just like taking that option, but does it actually give us the experience and value that we want as a business? That's where I think a lot of the publicity has kind of come down negatively. So I hope that we move more toward the left side here. But I guess time will tell, and maybe that's a cop-out answer because this is supposed to be predictions.
I actually I don't know if we're gonna get to this later, so sorry, Doyle, if we are, but I think another kind of like layer here is just the cost side of stuff. Um, and the fact that, we talk to a lot of companies that feel like they got burned by paying for a bunch of licenses to like a ChatGPT or equivalent, or like an AFI version of their like verticalized software. And they're like, I don't know what people did with this stuff. I don't know. Like I get the feeling there could be like a backlash in 2025 where it's like we're gonna shut down a lot of the AI stuff. And I don't know if that actually enables the left side of that. I hope it does for selfish reasons, but I don't know. I think there could be like a little bit of backlash in 2025 where it's just like, well, what's going on here? No, we're gonna like stop until we have like better sense of what's gonna actually drive value for our business.
Yeah, it's the year of the end of seat-based pricing and over to usage-based. I'm going to move us on here. I think that was a fantastic discussion, but we do want to have time for Q&A at the end, and you guys have lots of interesting thoughts so far. So the next question here is like, what is the biggest problem in terms of getting value? You can see on this slide the classic strawberry question where ChatGPT couldn't figure out how many R's there are in strawberry. And this is an example of the models sometimes just aren't predictable. They give answers that aren't right. They hallucinate. Sometimes the technology is the problem. On the other hand, you have BCG saying, actually 70% of your effort in your planning should be towards, the change management, your people and your processes, and making sure that your workforce is equipped with the right kind of structure, training, ideas, and strategy to make sure that you get value from this, and that technology and algorithms are a smaller part of the problem. You have here from Udacity, 77% of their survey respondents are somehow in some way using AI tools, but only about 25% of them feel like 25% of them have a advanced understanding of the tools and how to use them. They also found that 60% of organizations did not have an AI policy, that about 90% of workers plan to pursue additional training, but that only about 32% of workers are saying that their organization is providing the necessary training for them to be successful in using AI tools and getting the most from them. And then on the other hand, you have this report about marketing usage where marketers are almost absurdly optimistic in terms of using generative AI. If you've ever sent out surveys, it is very rare that you have everybody reporting positively like you see on these graphs, significantly exceeding expectations and somewhat exceeding expectations, getting by far the lion's share in terms of has AI been useful, how has your perception changed, etc. So marketers seem very happy about AI. And then on the other hand, a report of IT professionals are saying that the biggest barriers for IT for adoption of AI is governance, data, and customer data, and making sure that those things are secure. So that's a stark disagreement with BCG, where it's not about the technology or whatnot. It's really about your governance and your compliance. So I like to frame this discussion here, and we can't spend too long on it, but in your opinion, what is the biggest obstacle? Is it the technology not being good enough? Is it the people not knowing the best ways to use it and having the skills, or is it the use case? Are we marketing is a clear winner, but IT and product use cases maybe not so much. What do you think?
I think the tech is there. There's tons of use cases that are already like in production and market. I think it's the experience and understanding of the people that need to use it. And so like responsibility from us and companies that are implementing is to just make sure like this is made as easy as possible and assume that people that need to be using these tools are extremely entry-level novice users. And if you do that and you put the right effort into how you're like constructing the plan to introduce and building the tech to introduce this stuff to people, then there's a huge opportunity for success. If we're asking too much of them right now, it's gonna fall down regardless of how well defined use cases are, how good the models are, how good the tech is around it. So yeah, we're doing our best at that, but it's a collaborative effort.
So John agrees with BCG. Sachin, Mike, any disagreements?
I think so. Is that people?
That's people.
That was
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too, but I'll I'll like scope it a little bit narrower than that. I think it's the leaders are the biggest problem in this space. And it's because the organization, the employees are craving clarity around AI. Like, what are we supposed to be doing with this? How is it supposed to help us out? And a lot of the leaders in the space is what we see is we're just going to throw spaghetti at the wall. We're going to give everybody access to like ChatGPT and like you guys figure it out. So that is not a good way to architect an AI strategy. A better way to do it is to, you know, really think hard about what your expectations are around it. Think hard about who you're going to test this with, who your champions are, and then be able to try out a bunch of like underlying models so that you can realize that there are certain things that are going to provide value for you with the guardrails of like data security and things like that to make sure it doesn't go outside the bounds of that stuff. And so when all those things come together, you know, I think about one of our customers, Embark, where they do this really well. Then you see like this stuff really work. It really can drive a lot of value for the organization. But yeah, I think like it has to start with leadership and it has to start with them thinking hard about how this stuff gets rolled out. And it can't be an afterthought. It requires time and effort.
I'd say the contrary take I'll take is like the tech. It's coming from a CTO and product guy, so obviously I'm going to lean more into that side of it. But you know, the models are not easy to extract value out of themselves, right? Like they're insanely capable, but Doyle, to the points that you were making before, if part of your organization's plan is we're going to go use the models raw as they are, and we're going to try to extract value that way, there's a lot of infrastructure that's needed around it. You better become prompt engineering experts. You better have infrastructure to do RAG pipelines and information retrieval and get really, really deep onto that. You might need to develop your own custom tools to actually have the models do things that are valuable and interesting inside of your company, right? These are a lot of things that we've had to ship over the past year in elvex to actually make the tech useful. And I'd say we're still closing gaps on use cases that work well in elvex and then others that don't, that we still have to double down on. So I wouldn't at all say the tech is there and we can just use it. There's a lot of work that's needed to get things to bridge the gap.
I agree with that. I'm going to keep us moving here because we're running short on time. So we're going to skip this one. This was the bonus round, which is kind of the debate on, you know, as reasoning happens, things get less predictable. Agentic kind of requires predictability and ease of use requires simplicity. And how are we all going to be balancing these things? But we don't necessarily have all the answers for this one yet, but I do think it's a worthwhile topic we should return to. Sachin, I'm going to pass it off to you to quickly kind of share a little bit of information about our fundraising, and John, a quick customer story. Then Mike, we're going to hand it over to you for a demo of our upcoming agentic and other, you know, multimodal features. So Sachin, without further ado, over to you.
Great. Yeah. So happy to share a little bit more about, you know, kind of what we saw over the past year and a half since we started elvex. But basically, we realized that enterprise organizations are going to have to contend with this technology and adopt it. And really, they're going to have to see value come out the other side of it. And it isn't as simple as what I just said. Everybody gets access to ChatGPT and it will just work. There's actually Craig Winter commented or asked a question around, isn't this the only difference between Gen AI in the early days of the internet, PCs at home, smartphones, cloud computing, is that it's improving wildly faster and the penalty for fast follows is higher? Yeah, that's totally right. But you need the right platform to make it work inside your org. You need something that's going to bring intention and purpose behind it and give people kind of clarity around what is going to happen with generative AI. How can you put this in the hands of the people that have the biggest problems? How can you let them build? How can you protect your data? How can you use different models? How can you do all of this stuff in a world that is moving extremely fast? But if you do it, the opportunity is massive because you can make companies move so much faster. And so we like to say that we think that with elvex, companies can move at light speed. They can 3x, 5x the amount of work that they can do in a quicker amount of time and still get a ton of value out of it. And so that's really what we're aiming to do. We want to allow everyone at an organization not just developers or engineers who really understand this technology, but literally everyone to be an expert in their key area of what they want to do, but also be a generalist and try to tackle things that they haven't done before, because with generative AI, you can get those skills very quickly. And we want to let everyone solve these problems and build to solve these problems. And so we raised 6.4 million to tackle that. We did that on the backs of some really amazing customers that we were able to sign in the past year. A really, really, really talented, incredible team that we've been able to put together. And by the way, we're hiring right now. So if you are interested, please look at our career page. And we really want to be able to build a generational company that allows companies across the world to accomplish way more than they ever thought possible. And we want to give individuals the freedom to tackle more work at their own kind of cadence, at their own kind of intention, and do it in a way that's going to make them feel like they're superpowered.
Absolutely. That's why we're all here. And one of the things that we reviewed on this company retreat, I don't know if Sachin, you want to talk through this or if you want me to do it, but we had a little competitor review of other Gen AI tools. Do you want to take the next few slides?
Sure.
Yeah. So here you can see the first one from Amazon.
Yeah,
And
you like
what's your take on this guy?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things here is that like it is early tech, but that doesn't like we're even though it is early technology, we are very advanced in terms of like being able to build user experiences and interfaces that are going to be engaging, that are going to allow people to do things in the right way. And just across the space, we see ease of use and accessibility being a huge challenge. And a lot of people are coming into this with the experience of working with, consumer-led ChatGPT or Anthropic Claude. And so the expectation has to be on par, if not better, with this. And it's just lacking in the enterprise space overall. And so that's like a key area that we're pouring time, effort, and resources into to just make sure we have the best possible unified UI that gives you the capability to tap into any model.
Exactly. I don't think you want a bunch of end users looking at this screen and trying to figure out what temperature or the output length is going to be or things like that. Okay. So what are we building?
Yeah, so we want to build the easiest platform to create AI solutions that work. And like the words here are important. We want it to be easy for everyone to use, and we also want it to work. There is a lot of hype around AI, around what it can do, and there's not a lot of like promises delivered on the other side of that. And so for us, it's important that not only do we solve the ease of use accessibility problem, but we solve the value problem. That at the end of the day, you're getting real work done with this that's really valuable for you as an individual, for your company overall. And we're going to deliver on this.
So John, we're going to hand it over to you to tell us a quick example of that. What is this dream realized in real life?
Yeah, I have a few that I'll share really, really quickly. Sachin mentioned Embark before, one of our customers who had a really thoughtful rollout of elvex and their AI strategy overall. And it was a great example of how leadership identified, hey, there's huge opportunity here. We need a tool and technology and team that can support the way that we want to roll this out. And their 800-person company is now completely enabled with AI because they had the accessibility through elvex to just basically start from the point of, hey, just start like chatting with ChatGPT or Claude inside of elvex. And then as you get more familiar, we'll start to graduate you to working with custom apps that have been created. And then we'll start to give you the opportunity to create your own and build your own data sources and things like that. And that evolution was really exciting to watch because the structure and the thought that went into actually rolling it out, I think was just like eye-opening in terms of how important that element is when paired with the right technology. And now they're doing really fantastic stuff that's supporting the way that their business is working overall. It's changing the way that their business is working. It's changed the way that they're delivering their work to clients. There's a couple of other examples really quick. We have a customer, Graham Media, they're a media company, news media company, that came to us saying, we have a problem. The problem is that we don't have enough time and resources to do the level and depth of journalism that we actually aspire to do for our communities. And on day one of implementing elvex, they came back and said, we just had an investigative reporter come back, and they had a whole like huge list of documents that they've been sitting on that they haven't had time to go through. And with elvex, they were able to process all of those and get a story out that otherwise never would have been covered. So like this work is actually affecting like real world outcomes, communities, and that's like really validating for us and important, of course, for how people are working. And then you think about individuals that are going through that work themselves and being more efficient, being more productive, and the satisfaction they get, and the time that they have to do things that they actually really, really enjoy versus the things that they have to do as part of their job, is super satisfying. So I think like we can see the impact at the company level, we can see the impact at the user level, we can see the impact at the consumer level, in terms of like delivery of their work to their customers, their communities, things like that. So really awesome, much more that we're going to share. Expect more case studies and things like that from us in 2025. We want to make sure that we can get these stories out. And if you're a user on this call and you have a story that you want to share with us and we can help tell, please get in touch with us. We'd love to help get that good work seen by more people.
Awesome. Yes, we love to hear that. Please contact me if you have any stories you want to tell, because I will write them. Mike, we're going to hand it over to you to give a little demo here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, so everybody pray to the demo gods for some of the live demo that we're going to do here. We're focusing on a few new features that are making their way to elvex. This is not like a full tour of elvex. If you're interested in that, please reach out to us and we'll give you a tour of the product overall. But yeah, for some new things that are coming to elvex in late 2024, early 2025. The first up is sort of a multimodal approach that we're going to start enabling in elvex. So for a lot of problems, text is just not the input mode that you need. It's not what you can work with. And so as an example, let's say I was a hiring manager and I wanted to take, I've got my LinkedIn profile here and I wanted to take a portion of my experience, but I really needed this in table format for some reason. So previously in elvex, this wasn't a possibility. Now I can actually just kind of paste this image in, a screenshot that I just took on my computer, and I'm going to say, can you put this info into a table? And we're going to see that elvex now has the ability to read images for me, right? So this is leveraging some of the multimodal and image and vision support capabilities that some of the models have right now. And so just having that image in the screenshot, I can kind of see exactly what I copied and pasted here and put in. You can see that it's been able to extract all of my years of experience and put it into a CSV, which I could easily download here, or just copy directly into my clipboard, which is a super nice way to go.
What models does this work with?
Yeah, so there's limited support right now for specific models that have vision support. So that tends to be the Anthropic, Gemini, and OpenAI series of models, and their later revisions that work for that. But it's pretty incredible what the models are able to do. So if we start off with another one here, this is a picture that I took at the end of summer last year, and I'm just going to ask for a vivid description of the image. Again, it's pretty insane what the models are able to do. I'd say it's often better than human quality in terms of the level of detail that you get into here. So it's describing, a bustling fairground or a carnival at dusk, and it's specifically calling out things like the name of one of the rides and a Ferris wheel and things like that in the image. Again, very, very crazy to see the capabilities that some of the models have. So again, image attachments, it's a good point that Sachin made. These are only going to be available for certain apps that are using certain models. Once it's enabled for the model, if the model kind of supports image attachments, it's going to work out of the box. You'll be able to attach images. If not, you'll see that images are restricted. You can't actually add them to a chat or a conversation in elvex. So that's image attachments coming very, very soon. The next one here is that understanding images, of course, is great, but the capability of a lot of the multimodal models means that you sometimes don't want to just create an image, but you actually, or sorry, that you might want to input or read an image, but you might want to create one yourself, right? And so for elvex, a lot of folks have seen our logo. It's sort of this sleeping robot here. But one of the fun stories behind it is that generative AI was actually in the background and has been used to create versions of the elvex logo, right? And so for sales presentations, maybe I've got one coming up right now. I might want to start off with a slide that's going to be a variant on things in elvex. And actually, instead of copying and pasting this thing in, I'm going to showcase a new version, new capability that's launching soon, which is going to be speech to text. So I can hit the record button here, say I want to create an image of a dreaming robot on a black background, gold foreground, headshot only with a side profile, close-up portrait in the style of an illustration. Perfect. So elvex captured all that. I'm going to kick off a conversation here. And the very, very cool thing about this, as the response is sort of streaming in, is unlike image attachments, which do have to work with specific models that only have that capability, image generation is actually going to work with every single elvex app, regardless of the model that you're using. And so there you go. There's an example of an image being created and kind of streamed in with a little description of what's there. And of course, I can download it if I want. For folks that are curious, how do we kind of pull off the ability for every single model to be able to generate images in every app to do that? Administrators in elvex will be able to come in and configure an image generation provider across every single one of the apps that you use in elvex. So at the time of launch, we're only going to support OpenAI and specifically DALL-E 3 as the underlying model implementation that we're kind of using here. But once that is configured by your administrator, you can go into any elvex app that you have. So as an example, this sales meeting prepper one that I have, and I could enable image generation just as a tool here and be able to use that in my app going forward. And once that's enabled, image generation will just work out of the box. And last, but certainly not least, I will just switch over to one other screen that I've got. So image creation is definitely going to be new to elvex, but as we've been talking about during this webinar, the idea of folks using elvex as a place to create work or to create or the starting point for a lot of the work that they do, that hasn't been new. That's actually been some of the use cases that we've seen ever since we've launched. And so this use case of like creating a blog post or a marketing email or a code snippet or lots of other first drafts is so common that it's something that we're doubling down on with a new feature that we'll be launching called drafts inside of elvex. And so to give you a sense of how that looks, we're going to play something here where I'm asking my elvex kind of home app to say, can you search the web for product launches from OpenAI and Anthropic in this month, and then create a segment that I can use for an upcoming podcast that I might have, right? And so you can see we're going off to execute a web search here first and discovering what product launches actually happened. And then based on that, something new is going to happen here. It's not just going to be a response in the chat kind of stream here, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to open up a brand new draft of something that we can now work on together with the model. And I'll pause for kind of 1 second. You can kind of see what I'm mousing over right now is that there's built-in options with the different types of documents that you can create or the different types of drafts you can create for things that sort of quick actions that you can take. So in this case, I'm going to say this was good, but maybe I want this draft to be a little bit longer. That's automatically going to create a new version of this draft, and it's going to modify it to be able to do that. We'll see that kind of come back in 1 second here. And every single time I'm asking the AI to do something to the document, we're getting a new version created, and I can kind of toggle back and forth between the versions that we've worked on together. And what I can also do is that the snippets or the drafts that we're creating on the right here are fully editable. So I can actually come in here myself and I'm going to delete, a portion of text that I just thought was maybe irrelevant, but then I could keep working on the draft if I wanted to with the AI going forward. And so the documents that we're going to support in drafts initially, the document format that you're seeing on the right is not the only one. To show another example of a different format we're allowing is spreadsheets and tabular data. So in this case, I'm going to say, great, can you now create a list of upcoming AI events in Toronto for Q1 of 2025 and give me a spreadsheet for it. And in this case, because I've asked for a spreadsheet or specifically kind of tabular data, you can see that the draft that we have created in elvex instead is actually a spreadsheet, not a document, right? Which just makes more sense for the type of data and information that I was asking for here. And then finally, because this is a CTO demo, it wouldn't be complete if I didn't also ask for a code snippet of something in some way, shape, or form. And so we're just showing here that we can do editing as well on the spreadsheets that we've got. But lastly, I'm going to do a little demo here of creating a code snippet draft for something. So I'm going to ask for help creating a Python script that can take a change log of stuff that we've done in engineering and then maybe use GitHub to create customer-facing release notes. And exact same as what we've been seeing before, we now have a custom draft built up in elvex where I'm seeing the code that I can go in and edit myself here if I want to, and some quick actions that I can take on the top, like adding more comments or adding logs or fixing bugs or something like that. So drafts is going to be available starting in early 2025, but we think it's going to be a really, really powerful way to start doing work together with AI in a way that's going to make much, much more sense and just feel more seamless inside of elvex.
Same question here you're using for Omni for this. is this supported across models?
Yes, drafts are going to be supported across models. It's not going to be specific to only one. We may end up limiting it to only certain versions of models. There are capabilities that we're using inside of drafts that work better with certain classes of models, but it won't be specific to one provider.
And we are at time here, but we did say we will stick around for Q&A. And Mike, I don't know if there was one last thing you wanted to talk through quickly before we move over to Q&A. So if you can, stick around, please submit questions now because we will talk through them.
And I'll just personally say, there might be a lot of people that are excited about those features. I am very excited about using those features. The cool thing about elvex is I use elvex every single day to help me move at light speed, and like those things are gonna help me improve my work and the value that I produce dramatically.
Yeah, the last thing that I'll mention, and we wanted to spend more time on this, but again, in the context of this webinar, we've already gone a little bit late, and so I didn't want to spend too long, is a feature that some of our current customers have heard us talk about, but we're going to be getting into more, and we'll probably do a dedicated webinar, honestly, just on flows when we get into it. But long story short, instead of going into every detail about the feature, one of the issues that we've seen customers have in terms of building solutions that actually work is that if you've got a very complex workflow or a complex series of steps that you're trying to describe with elvex, getting all that to work inside of one elvex app has been pretty challenging in the past. And oftentimes what's needed for large language models is that they have to take a task that's big and break it down into smaller steps to be able to work through that. And especially to be able to get determinism, right? To actually get the result you want every time you use that task, as opposed to something that feels kind of random or by chance. And so flows are an early direction from us. It's something that we're going to be putting in beta in January of 2025 and eager to test with folks, where it's going to give you the ability to kind of break down a very large task into something that's smaller steps that are very repeatable and that you can use across the organization for the really complex use cases that you might have in your organization right now.
Moving on to some of the questions, there were like questions around specifics on timeline for this. So with what Mike demoed earlier around image generation, voice, image inputs, all of that stuff is going to be ready either by the end of the year or like the first few weeks of January. With flows, with drafts, that's going to be ready also in January. With flows, we're staging that because it is more of a complex feature release. We want to get some early feedback from our customers around that. And so if you are interested in being a beta tester for that product, please let us know. The obvious caveat is it is early. Stuff will break, but we are seeking feedback for that feature to help you do more complex things via AI. So just let us know if you're a customer, if you want to test that out, and we can set up some time to go over it. Let's see if we have other questions.
Yeah, from Andrea. Does our admin need to enable drafts before we can use it?
No, drafts won't have to be enabled by an admin, at least not in what we're currently planning for the feature.
If you have any other questions, please
yeah,
submit them now.
I see one now where it's will images include PDF to CSV? I'm not quite sure I understand that question. Mike, do you understand it?
I think the idea is like treating images inside of a PDF or something and being able to extract that to CSV. The answer would be no. You could certainly take like a screenshot or take an image out of a PDF that you've got and put it into a conversation with elvex, and it'll convert the contents there. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, I don't think it's going to do exactly what you think there.
Yeah, my read on that is like if there's a graph in a in a PDF that I have in a table, can you take that out of the PDF and put it into our own table?
Yeah, I guess the better way to kind of approach that one is that's part of sort of core improvements that we're going to be doing to elvex over the course of next year, where the attachments that you have, PDF documents and so on, we just do better jobs at extracting all the relevant information, and you shouldn't have to think about this stuff going forward. We'll just extract what's needed and put it into context as required.
Right. So I don't see any other questions being submitted. I want to thank everybody for sticking around for another 5 minutes. This is been a fantastic time with all of you and with our 3 founders here. Please have a good end of your year, and we are looking forward to 2025.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Happy holidays.